Our next speaker is our keynote speaker, and one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, when is it legal to break the law? And if you do that, how do you go about doing that? Well, Stewart Rhodes, the founder, fire-breathing dragon of Oath Keepers, is here to talk about that and many other issues today. I'd like to welcome him to the stage. Give him a big hand, Stewart Rhodes!
Well, I have to disagree with my host. If it's not pursuant to the Constitution, it is no law. It is null and void from inception. It creates no duties. It imparts no obligation on anyone. Any act of Congress or act of the executive branch contrary to the Constitution is null and void. It's not law. Those who are violating your right to bear arms right now and violating the Second Amendment, and the two are not necessarily the same. Your rights come from God, right? You were born with a natural right of self-defense and self-preservation. As Blackstone said, as the Founding Fathers said, it is the first law of nature. Remember this, there was no Second Amendment, April 19, 1775. Your forefathers bled and died on Lexington Green and at Concord Bridge in defense of their natural rights. They knew that if they gave up the right to bear arms and turned in their guns, that was the end. And so after a long train of abuses over many years, it was the attempt to disarm them that compelled them to fight. And we are now on a very short track to having the same choice laid before us. We have also suffered a long train of abuses. This is not in a vacuum. One thing I want to remind you of is back then, April 19, 1775, they were not just coming for the guns, they were also coming for people. John Hancock and Sam Adams were the target that day, along with the powder and the muskets and the cannon. They were going to come grab them and try to defang the resistance, that rattlesnake of American hard, fast resistance in the New England. Do you think that Hancock or Sam Adams would have gotten a jury trial? No, of course not. They've been taken off to a military brig ship in Boston Harbor because already Parliament had passed a law that denied them a jury trial and instead imposed a trial by a court of admiralty, which was essentially a military tribunal. And that's why, when you read the Declaration of Independence, what's it say right there? Among the causes of taking up arms was he has in many cases denied us the benefit of trial by jury. It was not just taxation without representation. It was a violation of well-established rights of Englishmen. That was their first objection. But when the English courts ruled against them, did they just go back to, they say, well, we lost, we got to go submit now. And was that their answer? That was not the end of the argument. They fell back and said, well, even if you're not going to recognize our rights as Englishmen, then by God, we're going to stand on our natural rights as human beings. We have a right to be free, and a right to be free from oppression and arbitrary detention and torture and confiscation of our property and impressment in the British Navy. All of these things were done to them. And they said we have a right to self-defense and self-preservation. And when they came for the guns, that's when the fighting began. Well, today we are suffering the same thing. What is the NDAA? It's a claim that the president can detain any American citizen in military detention indefinitely, the same as a goat herder in Iraq or Afghanistan, and to claim that he can impose military trial on you if you're lucky. He also has a secret snuff list of Americans he claims the right to kill. Is that constitutional? No! What part of the Constitution does it violate? You know? In particular, though,
First Amendment.
Right to a jury trial, but even more, the third, Article 3, Section 3, the Treason Clause. Go read it. It's very clear what's done with an American accused of making war against his own country requires a jury trial in front of a jury of his peers and 2 witnesses to the same overt act or open confession. Why is that there? Because the founders had learned, they had seen in English history the denial of jury trial. And these go together. Like I said, April 19th, they were going for people and guns. It all ties together. That's why in Oath Keepers, the very first thing we did is when we established in 2009 is issue a declaration of 10 orders we will not obey. Number one is we will not obey orders to disarm the American people. We will not obey that order. And we made very clear that we opposed a renewal of the so-called assault weapons ban. We also made it clear we oppose registration of gun owners or guns. Because the first step is registration. And that's where you should draw the hardest line. It's not that I will not turn my guns in. It's I will not register my guns, nor I will not register myself like a convicted sex offender. That's what they want. They want you to go down to your local PD and be photographed and fingerprinted just like a child molester is. And then told, also they want you to report to the Attorney General when you move. Now will you do that? That's where you must draw the line. Like I told the guys at the Idaho Open Carry Rally recently, if you go down and submit like that, you might as well turn in your balls too. And ladies, your ovaries. So that's your first line. Number two on our list of orders we will not obey. This is from the active duty Oath Keepers. We will not obey orders to conduct warrantless searches against the American people. Because that is how they will do it. It's wrong anyway, but how are they going to get your guns? It's going to be random checkpoints on the highway and searching your cars without a warrant. It's going to be house-to-house searches. That's how it's done. That's how it was done in Katrina. That was a huge wake-up call for a lot of people. A lot of people who had been in the military and police were kind of nonchalant and took it for granted they understood the Constitution. But look at Katrina. You had current serving police officers from all over the country and National Guard, and even 82nd Airborne deployed to New Orleans. And most of them did follow very unconstitutional orders to disarm peaceable American citizens who were just trying to defend their property. Was that right? Now, you hear nowadays, of course, number three on our list is we will not detain American citizens as unlawful combatants. And they all three go together. Those are the top three for a very good reason. Those are the actions that are most likely to compel a conflict between the people and those in public service. We're trying to avoid that. Now I hear some sheriffs and police chiefs across the country saying, well, you know, when Congress passes a law, it's my duty to enforce it until a court rules it unconstitutional. I have no power and no right to judge the constitutionality of the law. I have to enforce it until a court says no. Is that correct? No. Is that what we said at Nuremberg? No. What did we tell the Nazis at Nuremberg?
Just obeying orders.
Just obeying orders was their defense. We said just obeying orders is no defense. It's no excuse. We told them, you have an independent, individual obligation to say no. Because there's a higher law. Because you know what? Everything they did was legal in Germany under German law. They had entire battalions of reserve police officers called the Einsatzgruppen who were sent out to go and kill women and children and old people. Entire Jewish families were wiped out by the reserve cops. And they defended themselves later by saying we're just following orders. We told them it's no excuse, no defense, and we strung them up. That's what we did with them. Is that a valid defense for a U.S. soldier? What about Lieutenant Calley in the My Lai massacre? He obeyed orders to shoot women and children and issued those orders to his men, and they also obeyed those orders. Later on, he defended himself by saying, I had orders from superior officers to do this. Was that a valid defense? No. He was convicted. And he could not say, well, until I hear from a court, I have to obey the orders. Until some military tribunal or court in the military system tells me it's wrong, I got to obey. That's not the way it goes. He had a duty on the spot to say no, to judge the lawfulness of the order. All of you guys who've been in the military before, you all know this, right? You have a duty to say no to unlawful orders. Yes, if the order turns out to be lawful, you could be court-martialed and sent to Leavenworth, or even shot in wartime. But the same thing goes, if you follow an order that later on turns out to be unlawful, what happens to you? You can go to Leavenworth, or you can be shot. You're on the hook either way. You have a duty and responsibility to do what's right. There's no guarantee it'll turn out good for you. Michael New is a good example of a case where the man did the right thing, refused to serve under UN command, and he was railroaded out of the Army and not given a valid chance to defend himself. It was a kangaroo trial. But he still did the right thing. If you are willing to fight and die for your country, and I'm talking to all the military and police out there, if you are willing to fight and die, which I presume, then you damn well better be willing to give your liberty or your life in defense of the Constitution. Because what was your oath? Your oath was to the Constitution. It was not, I swear to support and defend whatever the president says. Is that the American oath? That was the Nazi oath. In Nazi Germany, the oath was, I will obey the Fuhrer. I swear to obey the Fuhrer unconditionally, and I will die for him. That was the Nazi oath. That is not the American oath. Our oath is to the Constitution, period. Yes, enlisted are also recite part of the oath that I will obey the orders of the president and the officers appointed over me pursuant to the UCMJ. So what does that mean? They got to be lawful. There is no authority from the president all the way down to the local dog catcher, no authority whatsoever to ever step outside the Constitution. When they step outside the Constitution, they have no power. They are just simple men and women. And you have no obligation to obey such an order. And in fact, you have a duty and responsibility to say no. Some other good examples in American history. In the North, after the Dred Scott decision, after the Supreme Court ruled that no black man could ever be a citizen of any northern state, you had nullification in the North. You had refusal of northern juries to convict even when the person admitted they were harboring fugitive slaves. You had refusal of police and sheriffs in the North to arrest someone who was harboring a fugitive slave. And in fact, you even had sheriffs in the North who threatened U.S. Marshals with arrest if they attempted to come in to enforce the Fugitive Slave Act. Because even though the Supreme Court said it was constitutional, the people of the North said, no, we disagree. We will not enforce it. That's a good example of what has to happen today. Were they wrong to do that? According to the wisdom of these sheriffs and police chiefs who are saying they have to follow any law passed by Congress or any law passed by the Den of Vipers in Sacramento, according to that logic, those sheriffs in the North were wrong. They should have convicted, they should have arrested people and charged them with assisting fugitive slaves. And in the My Lai massacre, you know who saved the day there? Warrant Officer Thompson. You know his story? Here's a guy who was flying his helicopters. He was in command of 3 choppers. He flew in, saw what was going on. He landed his choppers, and he told his door gunners, if they fire on me or on any more on those women and children, I want you to promise you will open fire on them, is what he said. And he went out in person and risked his life to stop it. And he brought like dozens of women and children to the choppers and saved them. And he helped. I was an Army paratrooper, very proud of my service. But I'll tell you right now, Warrant Officer Thompson helped to preserve the honor and integrity of the U.S. Army by what he did that day. He did the right thing. He risked his life. He was willing to lay down his life to stop a war crime and to preserve our honor. So you had an oath breaker in Lieutenant Calley, and you had an oath keeper, small letters, in Warrant Officer Thompson, right there in that one situation. Who was right? Calley to just follow orders, or Warrant Officer Thompson to put a stop to it? Who was right? He was right. According to these sheriffs, he was wrong. He should have, not only should he stayed out of the way, but according to their logic, he should have assisted, because those were orders. Let you know what a bunch of bull that is. Now folks, you need to stand up just like your forefathers right now. You need to draw a hard line in the sand. That you are willing to go to jail, you are willing to give your life to preserve what has been given to you with the blood of America's war dead, all the way from Lexington Green and Concord Bridge, all the way through history, through Normandy Beach, Iwo Jima, all the way to the sands of Iraq and Afghanistan today. Men have died, good men have died to preserve your liberty. If you squander it now and sacrifice it now because you're too afraid to stand up, then your children and grandchildren will curse your name. And our war dead will look down upon you with contempt. Do not make what they did, all their sacrifice, be for nothing. You got to stand up. You got to stand up as individuals. You got to stand up as communities, as towns, as counties and states. It starts with you. That's why with Oath Keepers, we have said what we're going to do. Active duty Oath Keepers have been very clear. They will not be tools of oppression. Many of our police officers also expressed the conviction that they will interpose themselves and defend the people of their community against violations of their rights. Not just the right to bear arms, but the rest of them too. And you have over 300 sheriffs now across the country have stood up. Good men are standing up and saying no, that they will interpose and defend you. Because if they don't, this is the message to the current serving police, if you obey these unconstitutional orders and trample on the rights of the American people, the veterans of this country and the gun owners of this country are not going to just roll over and take it. There's going to be a fight. The last thing I want to see is current serving and veterans killing each other. For what? For these lying, I don't want to cuss, so for these lying politicians? The current serving police and military should say to the politicians, if you want their guns so bad, you go get them. You put the body armor on yourself, sling up an M4, and go get them. Let's see Feinstein or Steinberg, your senator here in California. Let's see them do that. They want them so bad, go do it themselves. So if the military police stand down and refuse to be used against you, it can't be done. I don't care how many DHS special agents there are. If the FBI were to go along with it, which you should not count on, some of them are good guys. I don't care how many mercenaries they hire, they cannot do it without the support of the military and police in this country. It can't be done. So, but you got to start. It's not enough for you to say, oh, Sheriff, please respect my rights and protect me. You have a duty. Once again, where are the veterans at? Where are you at? When's your oath expire? Never. You are duty-bound still to defend the Constitution. So you need to stand up and declare that you will not submit, that you will not comply, that you will resist any violation of your right to bear arms. Draw this line in the sand. You stand up shoulder to shoulder with each other and all the gun owners. And then you turn to your sheriff and say, Sheriff, if you do the right thing, we are with you. We are right here shoulder to shoulder with you and we'll support you even if it means our lives. Be willing to be his posse. Be willing to be the militia of your county. But then you tell the sheriff also, and the chief of police, but if you stand against us, if you violate your oath and desecrate all that our brothers fought and died for, we will oppose you. We will oppose you in every way possible, including on the field of battle if we must. It is a time of choosing. Make April 19th the deadline now. You choose where you're going to be, what side you're on. Are you a patriot or are you a redcoat? And then tell them it's time for you to choose. Sheriff, here's your deadline, April 19th. By that deadline, we want to know what side you're on. We want to know with no equivocation, no mealy-mouthed bunch of nonsense words about supporting the Second Amendment. Nail him down on specifics. Will he oppose registration? Will he refuse to enforce registration, even if it's passed by the legislature? Will he refuse to impose confiscation of guns or magazine capacity bans? Nail him down on particulars. Demand a clear answer. And then when that day comes, April 19th, if he has not given you a clear answer, I think he's given you a clear answer where he stands. Make this a litmus test. You choose between now and then force them to choose. Pick a side. Patriot or redcoat. Captain Parker and his men chose April 19, 1775, what side they were on. They stood up on that green and lined up. And when the British officer demanded that they turn their guns in, that they surrender their arms, they refused. Captain Parker ordered his men, stand your ground, do not fire unless fired upon. But what else did he say? But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here. It was still defensive, but they were resolved, and when ordered to lay down their arms, they refused. And that's when the fighting started. you are in the same posture. Stand your ground. Do not fire unless fired upon. But do not disarm. And if they mean to have a war, then let it begin here. Because there's no better issue in this country that cuts across all lines and is clearer than this. Americans who might have put up with the NDAA because they didn't feel it personally, feel this personally. So this is a great gift to us. I can't tell you, I've talked to all kinds of current service military very recently, and this has been a big eye-opener for them. They are now paying attention. Where before they might have been asleep, they are now paying close attention. So in closing, I'm going to say this. Stand in defense of all of the Bill of Rights. Do not cherry pick. Smedley Butler, the famous Marine general, 2 times winner of Congressional Medal of Honor, said that there are only 2 things worth fighting for. One is your homes, the other is the Bill of Rights. That's it. That is what counts. The Bill of Rights is our bedrock. If you allow it to be violated, cast aside, there is no America without the Bill of Rights. It's gone. So follow Smedley Butler's advice. Prepare to defend your homes and the Bill of Rights, every piece of it. And I have to wonder, where in the heck are the Occupy people? Where are they at? Why aren't they here? How can you say the country is being run into the ground by corrupt international bankers and corporations, the 1%, at the expense of the 99%, and still somehow favor the disarmament of the 99%? It makes no friggin' sense. We are the people. They should be standing with us on this. It's not about left or right, it's about our Bill of Rights. So now, for those of you who would like to renew your oaths, whenever we hold a public ceremony, we give the opportunity to do so. Now, why do we do this? Well, in 1798, in a moment of crisis and political division in the United States, there were men in the militia of Massachusetts who gathered on Lexington Green and they renewed their oaths to the Constitution. And there were others who gathered across the country at the same time. So we do the same thing. We follow in their footsteps. It's not something new we created. They did it. When they renewed their oaths, among them were men who had fought on Lexington Green in 1775. And also their sons were there too. And they all stood together and raised their right hand and renewed and reaffirmed the oath they had already sworn. And many of them had already bled for. When they were done, they sent a proclamation to John Adams, the president at the time, about what they had done. And his response is what's on the back of some of our t-shirts. In response to this militia reaffirmation of oaths, he said this: "Oaths in this country are as yet universally considered as sacred obligations. That which you have taken and so solemnly repeated on that venerable spot, Lexington Green, is an ample pledge of your sincerity and devotion to your country and its government." That's what President Adams said in response to that renewal ceremony. Now, we did a renewal ceremony on Lexington Green in 2009. It was quite awesome. Active duty military, police, and also retired, all standing together, right on the same line where Captain Parker and his men stood when we reaffirmed our oaths. Once in a lifetime experience. Sadly, President Obama did not congratulate us on the renewal of our oaths. But I invite you, whether he likes it or not, I invite you to reaffirm your oath today if you've sworn one before and you still mean it. And for those of you who never have, but would like to join with us in taking an oath to support and defend the Constitution, we invite you to do so as well. But we caution you, don't do it unless you're serious about it. Do not raise your hand and swear an oath to the Constitution unless you're willing to bleed and die for it if you must. Sweat now or bleed later, but don't do it unless you're serious. I took an oath as a paratrooper long before I took an oath as a lawyer. Which one do you think matters the most to me? Damn right. Lawyers don't bleed for their country, usually not. So take it only if you're serious. Danny, let's have one of our other guys come up and give the oath ceremony. Either John or Brian. Brian, come on up here. You're a vet. You come do it. Right here, bud. Come here. You do it. You. Come here.
You got Brian!
Come do it. He's a Navy veteran. I don't care if he's got long hair. Who cares about that? He swore the oath, and he meant it. You got it in front of you? I need a brochure. There you go.
You got it?
Do it.
Okay, please take the oath with me. I state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Thank you.